You know what sounds like a peaceful business? Opening a tavern. A warm fire, wooden tables, a few travelers swapping rumors about dragons, civil war, and some guy who definitely used to be an adventurer. You serve stew, pour mead, rent a few rooms, and spend your evenings watching snow fall outside while coins gently clink into a strong box. Very cozy. Very rustic. Very, I have escaped modern capitalism. And then, of course, reality walks in wearing iron boots, covered in mud, demanding ale, breaking a chair, and somehow making you responsible for the emotional support of an entire town. Because opening a tavern is not really a cozy fantasy. It is hospitality management in a violent, freezing, unstable economy where supply chains are terrible, labor is limited, property maintenance is constant, and random destruction is treated with the same emotional intensity as light drizzle. Like, oh, the sign got torn off, 2 windows shattered, and a mercenary threatened the bard again. Yeah, bit windy tonight. And that's the thing. People imagine taverns as charming little money printers for retired fantasy characters. But a tavern is not a fireplace with mugs. It is a machine, a very flammable machine, one that runs on food, fuel, repair work, payroll, storage, sleep-deprived logistics, and your willingness to smile politely while someone named Ulfgar the extremely unwashed asks if you take payment in future glory. You do not. So let's talk about how much it will actually cost to open a tavern. In Skyrim, to be precise, not in a romantic way, in a business sense, in an ugly, beautiful, and extremely inconvenient business sense. Why Skyrim, though? Because I like this game, and it was first to come in my mind. Of course, this applies not only to Skyrim. You can imagine any fantasy world like this one. Whatever your heart desires, it will not change the essence of the video theme. So, let's get started. First, the building. Everyone skips this part because fantasy worlds love to act like property just sort of happens. One day, there's a timber building with a carved sign and a stable out back, and nobody asks who paid for it. But you are paying for it. If you're opening a tavern in a major city like Whiterun or Solitude, the upfront cost is brutal. Location matters in Skyrim just like it matters anywhere else. You want foot traffic. You want travelers, merchants, soldiers, mercenaries, and people wealthy enough to buy something stronger than cabbage soup. You also want relative safety, which in Skyrim is a hilarious phrase, but still, there are layers of danger. Mildly stab-prone is better than occasionally visited by dragons. A city tavern gives you better traffic, but also higher entry cost, more political oversight, more competition, and probably some informal obligation to keep local guards, stewards, or officials happy, which is a very old-world way of saying your operating environment may include taxes, favors, and the occasional strategic gift basket of mead. If you open outside a major hold, the property is cheaper, but now you've traded rent pressure for transport pain. Every barrel, sack of grain, wheel of cheese, keg of ale, and cut of meat has to survive roads full of bandits, wolves, weather, and that one giant who treats livestock theft like a performance art piece. Then comes furnishing. Tables, chairs, beds, linens, cookware, mugs, storage barrels, shelves, candles, lanterns, serving tools, wash basins, and probably a decent lock on the room where you keep the money. And that's before we get into the kitchen. A functioning tavern kitchen is not just a fire in optimism. You need pots, knives, spit roasting equipment, prep surfaces, salt, preserved ingredients, fresh ingredients, and a reliable way to store food before it becomes a health event. Skyrim is cold, which helps a little. But cold weather is not a business strategy. It is just nature doing part-time refrigeration. Then there's fuel. This is where the cozy fantasy really starts charging interest. A Skyrim tavern burns through wood constantly, Heating, cooking, hot water if you're offering anything remotely civilized, maybe multiple hearths depending on the building size. In a northern climate, fuel is not a background detail. Fuel is survival wearing a bookkeeping hat. And unlike the game, where a fire just crackles forever like it has divine backing, real fuel needs to be chopped, stored, dried, protected from moisture, and replenished all the time. A long winter is not atmospheric for you. It is a direct attack on margins. Food is its own headache. A tavern menu sounds simple until you remember that feeding people consistently is one of the most annoying businesses humans ever invented. You need staples like bread, root vegetables, onions, cabbage, salt, grains, cheese, and cheap cuts of meat. Then you need enough variety so people don't feel like they're paying to experience peasant despair in bowl form. If you want to be known for good food, your costs climb. Better meat, better ale, fresher produce, spices if you can get them, maybe fish if your supply line allows it. Suddenly, your charming tavern is one late delivery away from becoming the place with the disappointing stew. And that reputation matters. In a world without apps or reviews, word of mouth is everything. Which sounds nice until you realize word of mouth is also how one bad night turns into 3 months of reduced traffic because a carriage driver told half the province your rabbit pie tasted philosophically troubling. Now let's talk staff. This is where the fantasy of tavern ownership really falls apart because people imagine themselves as the owner. They rarely imagine themselves doing payroll. You need serving staff. You probably need kitchen help. You may need a stable hand, a cleaner, someone to handle supplies, maybe a bard if you want atmosphere. And depending on location, you might quietly need someone who is large, calm, and difficult to intimidate. Not officially security, of course. Just a man whose shoulders have ended several arguments. Labor costs might not look modern, but they still exist. Workers need wages, food, maybe lodging, and some reason not to leave for a sawmill, a farm, or military service. Your labor market includes war, crime, and the general inconvenience of people sometimes being eaten by wildlife on the road. Which brings us to the part nobody includes in the dream board. Repairs. Repairs are not occasional. Repairs are the business. Chairs break, floorboards warp, roofs leak, kegs crack, locks jam. Bedding gets ruined, windows get damaged, signs rot, kitchen tools wear out. Plumbing, if you have anything resembling it, is probably a medieval suggestion more than a system. And then there's customer damage, which is not a side category. It is a climate pattern. A normal tavern somewhere else worries about spilled drinks and the occasional broken mug. A tavern has to budget for fistfights, drunken falls, knife threats, panic during monster attacks, furniture being used incorrectly in moments of patriotic debate, and travelers stumbling in after some dungeon-related misfortune expecting both soup and emotional rehabilitation. The wild part is that nobody in that world seems especially shocked by any of this. A brawl breaks out, and the cultural response is basically, well, there goes another chair. That chair costs money. Every broken stool, damaged beam, shattered plate, and singed curtain is a tiny reminder that hospitality is just customer service plus property destruction. And then there's lodging. Renting rooms sounds like easy extra income until you remember rooms need mattresses, blankets, candles, basic cleaning, and some attempt at security. Guests steal, guests break things, guests arrive filthy, guests leave mysteries. Running rooms above a tavern means you are operating a business where your daytime revenue depends on food and drink, and your nighttime revenue depends on whether strangers can behave themselves horizontally. Some cannot. Now, would a tavern make money? Potentially, yes. That's why they exist. A well-located tavern in a trade route town could do solid business. Food, drink, rooms, stable fees, private dining, maybe paid local performances, maybe partnerships with merchants or caravans. There's recurring demand because people always need shelter, heat, and somewhere to sit while pretending they're only having one drink. But the real challenge is that tavern income can look healthy while actual profit stays weirdly thin. This is the part people still get wrong now, by the way. Revenue feels impressive. Revenue walks into the room dressed like success. Profit arrives later, tired, carrying firewood, asking why the roof is leaking again. That's the turning point. The real cost of opening a tavern is not just the coin you spend. It's the fact that the whole business sits at the intersection of comfort and chaos. You are selling warmth in a cold world, rest in an unstable one, normalcy in a province where unexpected event can mean anything from political tension to dragon-shaped aviation problems. And that changes how you think about money, because once your business exists to absorb other people's stress, your costs become emotional as well as financial. You are not just buying meat and candles. You are constantly paying to keep the illusion intact, to make the room feel warm even when supplies are late, to smile when margins are bad, to repair what the world keeps casually breaking. That's tavern ownership, or honestly, half of adulthood. So what's the practical lesson here? It's that every cozy fantasy has an operating cost. Every comforting space somebody depends on is being held together by labor, maintenance, planning, and a slightly haunted relationship with expenses. We tend to admire the visible charm and ignore the invisible systems, the full mugs, not the supply ledger, the fireplace, not the woodpile, the vibe, not the invoice. And once you see that, you get a little wiser about money in general. Because financial pressure is rarely just about one big expense. More often, it's the steady drip of upkeep. The things that seem small until they become your whole life. Heat, food, repairs, wages, replacements. The price of keeping things functional, welcoming, and alive. That's true in fantasy world. That's true now. And maybe that's why this weird little fantasy business hits something real. We all want the tavern, the safe place, the warm room, the feeling that somebody, somewhere, has things under control. We just forget what it costs to be the person running it. So yes, opening a tavern could make you money. But more importantly, it would teach you one of the oldest financial lessons on earth. Comfort is expensive, stability is built, and the world will keep breaking chairs while acting like that's just how evenings work. And honestly, that may be the most realistic part of the whole fantasy.